India has over 6.4 MSMEs, or micro, small and medium enterprises. Around 2 crore of them are in manufacturing. Together, they employ millions and account for a third of India's economic output. But a large part of this engine is running with cash stuck upstream. A new delayed payments report puts hard numbers on a problem that MSMEs have lived with for years. Drawing on government portals, banking data, and field consultations, the report tracks how payment delays continue to choke liquidity, jobs, and growth despite multiple policy interventions. The headline number is stark. Delayed payments to MSMEs are estimated at 7.3 lakh crore rupees. This number is down from its 2022 peak, but still equal to about 5% of India's gross value added. The law on this is unambiguous. Buyers must pay MSMEs within 45 days, but on ground, the situation is messed up. On the government Samadhan portal, which tracks complaints on delayed payments to these companies, MSMEs have filed over 2.5 lakh delayed payment applications. Nearly 1 lakh cases are still pending, involving more than 22,000 crore rupees. Data from the report also shows that state governments, central departments, and PSUs account for a disproportionate share of these delays. Now, the government has created mechanisms like TReDS, a tool for invoice-based early payments, and MSCFCs for settling payment disputes. Banks also have been nudged to expand MSME credit, with lending targets rising year after year. And yet, for many MSMEs, liquidity remains fragile. So where exactly is the bottleneck? And why does a payment system designed to protect small businesses still leave so many waiting to be paid? Listen on, it's Friday, the 19th of December. I'm Anirban Chowdhury. This is the Morning Brief. To unpack this, I'm joined by Basant Kaur, who leads India operations at C2FO, and Ramesh Dharmaji from GAME, or the Global Alliance for Mass Entrepreneurship. C2FO and GAME co-authored the Delayed Payments Report. Hi Basant and Ramesh, very warm welcome to the Morning Brief.
Hello.
Hi Anirban, good to be here.
So Basant, if you could tell me about C2FO and then Ramesh about GAME.
C2FO is a global working capital platform. We're focused on helping businesses get paid faster through technology-led early payment solutions. We've been in India since 2016 and we work with over 100 plus large corporates, many of them being Nifty 50 companies. And through these associations with these corporates, we've built a network of about 200,000 or 2 lakh suppliers, a majority of whom, of course, are MSMEs. We facilitated over $4 billion in financing, so approximately 50,000 crores worth of financing in India last year alone. And we've also launched last year itself our TReDS platform. So we are the only multinational to have received a license to operate a TReDS platform in India. We're very focused on making liquidity and capital available to small business as and when they need it and at the lowest possible cost.
So GAME is an non-for-profit organization. So we work across the entrepreneurial MSME chain, right from making entrepreneurship aspirational and mindset change, then enabling local hyper systems, strengthening access to finance, both urban and rural women. We work with both existing and new entrepreneurs, new units, MSMEs, for enabling access to formal credit and expanding their markets.
So Basant, now let's come to the delayed payments report. Describe the problem to me.
As per the MSME Samadhan portal, there have been over 2.5 lakh delayed payment applications that have been made. This is on the portal since inception. And of these, around 1 lakh cases are still pending or are yet to be taken up. So, and they involve approximately 22,000 crores. The portal that, and these numbers that I just highlighted, they represent only part of the problem, right? So we have been working with Game for the last 3 years. And in fact, the report that you mentioned is a third in a series of reports that we've published. So back in 2022, we estimated, again in collaboration with Game, that the extent of the delayed payment problems was to the tune of 10.7 lakh crores. And the report that we released in 2025, which is last month, we estimate the problem to have come down by about 30% and now stands at about 7.3 lakh crores, right? Now, the good news is that the numbers come down by about 30% from the 22 number, but this still represents a significant chunk of India's GVA. It represents approximately 5% of India's GVA. So, of course, much more needs to be done, given the consequences that this has on employment generation and economic growth.
But the government has mandated payment clearances in 45 days for MSMEs. Why the pile up in delayed payments? Is there a regulatory gap?
See, the way to think about it is not the absence of regulation. I mean, the 45-day rule has been around for the better part of 2 decades now, nearly, right? The gap really lies between policy and then the execution of that policy, right? So buyers, and I would say many buyers, including several large ones and PSUs, etc., they often operate with legacy approval systems. They'll have budget cycle constraints, and basically they face very limited consequences for these delayed payments. Now, at the same time, you have MSMEs that are reluctant to invoke legal remedy. So even if the legal remedy exists, they're reluctant to invoke it because they fear that this will strain a commercial relationship with the buyer, right? So really, until payment discipline is embedded into governance and operational workflows, delays will continue to persist despite this mandate.
Okay, now let's look at it from the other side. Ramesh, how much have public and private sector banks expanded MSME credit over the last 2 years?
See, MSME has been the focus of the government since last couple of decades. They are setting up targets year on year, and there is a growth year on year, and number of SOPs and new schemes are being introduced. MSME sector has aggressively tapped formal funds, and the total outstanding from the scheduled commercial banks, is something like 35 lakh crore in 2024, which was a growth of over 20% compared to previous year. Since then, the public sector banks and the private sector banks have significantly expanded the MSME credit, with now total exposure reaching approximately 43.3 lakh crore. It's September 25, and they are meeting the targets regularly. But the government is very clear, and the institutions, and especially the public sector banks, are very clear. They see how much new to credit they have added. For example, during FY25, 13.2 lakh numbers of new MSMEs who are getting the credit for the first time were added.
And if you could tell me, what are the government's MSME loan targets for the next few years?
This year, FY26, the target is something around 6.2 lakh crore. Okay, and the next year it's about 7.2 lakh crore. Typically, government aims around 8 to 10, 12% growth year on year, depending on what kind of gear it is. So, right from almost 2 decades, they are aiming at 8 to 10% growth.
Okay, now Basant, let's talk about TReDS, which for our listeners is an RBI regulated platform that lets MSMEs get paid early by discounting invoices once a buyer approves them. Banks and financiers bid on those invoices, and the MSME gets cash upfront while the buyer pays later on the due date. And of course, as some of the largest buyers, many central public sector enterprises or CPSCs are mandated to participate. Now, how do you see the adoption of it among MSMEs, and what challenges do you see there?
So, I think TReDS has been one of the most successful policy interventions that the government has done over the last decade, right? So TReDS is regulated under the Payments and Settlements Act. There were 3 licenses given out way back in 2016. And those TReDS platforms have sort of done the groundwork and really got TReDS off, to a good start. We are the fourth licensed TReDS platforms. Combined today, TReDS is doing something to the tune of 25,000 crores worth of payments to MSMEs in any given month, right? I think the challenge is that, see, TReDS is designed to be a system wherein the recourse is on the buyer. So when the bank actually comes in and bids on invoices, they collect from the buyer. So to that extent, the MSME is dependent on the buyer to upload invoices, to accept invoices. And therefore, when you have CPSEs or you have other buyers that actively start using TReDS or actively start uploading invoice and accepting invoices on TReDS, you will start to see that MSMEs that are also supplying into this sector, they will also start to take benefit from this platform, right?
But aren't they doing
so
it now?
Of course. So lots of CPSCs already use it very actively. In fact, you have state governments that have now signed up on TReDS and use it across multiple departments to make payments into MSMEs. But of course, lots more can be done, right? We also, of course, a good example of it is GEM, which is the government e-marketplace, which is also looking to go live on TReDS. But like I said, there is enough and more runway for this to grow further.
Okay, so what then do you see as the biggest problem or the biggest reason behind these delayed payments?
So, there's two things, right? So I look at regulation and, those sorts of things, or, when you start to talk about penalties and interest penalties and so on and so forth, those are the sticks that you use, right, to enforce a certain or to engender a certain kind of behavior. I think equally important as you think about the regulation part of it, the carrots that you can provide, right? We talked about behavioral inertia, and we talked about the legacy practices that exist, right? So I think that's where one needs to also focus energy. In fact, when you think about our sort of core platform, right, which is the business that C2FO has been in, through which we built this network, where we enable seamless, frictionless early pay solutions for suppliers. Essentially, those platforms scale and work well because buyers are incentivized then to make early payment to suppliers, right? And that creates a very nice flywheel. So, in fact, the carrot can be, how do we incentivize buyers and create this win-win equation wherein the buyer benefits when there is early payment made to an MSME, and where the supplier, of course, gets access to liquidity. So I think that is going to be very critical for us to solve, as we, of course, also solve for on the regulatory side of things.
Now, coming to you, Ramesh, let's talk about legal recourse. There are micro and small enterprises facilitation councils for settling legal disputes over payments. But they face a huge backlog of cases themselves, which is, of course, a malaise that our entire legal system suffers from. Now, what's the solution to this?
Yeah, there are a couple of things. First is expand and organize councils. Some large states like UP have only a few councils. So we need to expand this now, and maintain at least 3 to 5 member composition. If these are not maintained, the quorum is not there, then the committee meetings don't take place. So that is one is expand to the optimum level. Then fast track procedures. The government is actually seized of the matter, and they are looking at how do we fast track the procedures. That summary proceedings for small clear liability claims under section 229B of the Arbitration Act. Make statutory timelines mandatory with penalties on buyers for frivolous objections and non-attendance in the mediation. See, the whole thing starts with mediation. Many of the buyers don't turn up for mediations. So that is a major challenge. Then executions. See, even if the council gives a verdict, for the execution, they have to go back to the civil structure. So how to execute the money decrease. And there is always a challenge. And again, it takes a long time. And ODR is in the game. Again, we, right from the beginning, promoted ODRs. And in many cases, the ODRs have left and the number of applications have come down. So more digital approach to this solving of this mediation and solving of this problem, and more ODRs playing an active role in the resolution of this problem would bring down the backlog.
ODRs, for our listeners, of course, stands for Online Dispute Resolution. Now, Basant and Ramesh, how do you see the problem of delayed payments shaping up in the next few years? And do you see some solutions actually coming?
I think first, what we've already talked about, right? We need to move away from, when I talk just about TReDS, away from onboarding mandates to more behavior-based accountability, what we call, right? So we need to engender that behavioral change where buyers actually feel that it is in their interest to actually make payments to MSMEs on time, not just for a compliance or not just for a checkbox that they're going to have. I think two, we talked a little bit about the digital public infrastructure that we need to leverage. So TReDS needs to be strengthened via integrations with GSTN so that invoice information can flow seamlessly into TReDS. TReDS needs to be strengthened by enabling even flows through GEM. So integrations with the government e-marketplace would help. And I think the third thing is just more around reducing friction, right? So I think dispute resolutions, again, Ramesh talked about ODR, which is online dispute resolution. We talked about the MSFECs and, do we need more councils to be set up and so on and so forth. So all that needs to happen concurrently and in parallel. And by the way, I would also include within this sort of simplifying KYC processes, and again, interoperability of KYC, etc. All of this will only serve to further reduce that burden that MSMEs currently face to get adequate and timely access to liquidity and capital.
If I may add one small thing, there is one thing which game has been experimenting. It has been experimenting with some of the TReDS companies also. See, improve economics and risk sharing. So we should look at how we can bring in some credit insurance and credit enhancement guarantees, either from SIDBI or from insurance companies, some insurance products which can help lower rated buyers to play on the TReDS platform. Because as you see now, the entire thing revolves around the credibility of the buyer. So if we can bring in some insurance products, some credit enhancement products, it will go a long way along.
Basant, Ramesh, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
The irony is hard to miss. India calls MSMEs the backbone of the economy, but lets their cash get trapped upstream. The report shows progress. Delayed payments are down from the 2022 peak, but it also shows fragility, weak enforcement, slow dispute resolution, and credit rules that punish the wrong side. If India wants more jobs, more exports, and more resilient growth, it needs to solve this payment culture problem. Because when small businesses don't get paid on time, well, the economy does not either. That's it for today. This episode was produced by me, sound designed by Amrit Reggie. A new episode of The Morning Brief drops every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday on your favorite listening platform. Keep listening. Have a good weekend.